Hey you.
Imagine, you're hiding in a locker. You hear shuffling footsteps and the clicks of a box cutter extending and retracting. Voices whispering all around, only drowned out by your intense breathing. You look through the slats of the locker to see a bloody face staring back at you. This experience becomes reality with Yggdrazil Group's Thai myth-themed horror, Home Sweet Home. Yggdrazil Group dropped Home Sweet Home onto Steam a little over a year ago to horrify audiences with ghost stories from Thai mythology. This review is of the Xbox version of the game, and it's immediately noticeable that during the transition, the game's graphical power and performance took a severe dip. On Xbox, the game looks more polygonal and angular, rougher around the edges, as well as a dipped frame rate that makes the experience lose some of its fluidity. Graphics aside, Home Sweet Home is rife with tension. The exploration and puzzles of the game demand that you wander into the unknown, leaving you peeking around every corner, trying not to get jumped by something unseen. The atmosphere cultivated in the game is delightfully unsettling, and does more than enough to make you question every moment. This is Home Sweet Home at its very best, and it provides a genuine fright. Unfortunately, the excellent atmosphere is severely bogged down by lackluster and downright frustrating enemy encounters. One of the main antagonists of Home Sweet Home is a bloody ghost of a schoolgirl wielding a box cutter. Shambling through halls and whispering to herself, she hunts down Tim, our protagonist, through a school and dorm area, and instantly stabs him to death if he gets caught. These stealth sections are the epitome of monotonous and relied upon all too much. The only way to get around the ghost is to hide in a locker or behind an object and wait for her to shuffle past. At best, these scenarios are boring, bog-standard stealth mission tropes, but they make up the bulk of the gameplay. At worst, they are controller-cracking level frustrating, as the ghost's walking patterns can flip around with no warning, or become so broken to a point of requiring a reload. Personally, I encountered this when I was spotted by the ghost, and darted to a nearby locker. She jumped up to the locker and looked through the slats, then turned around and bumped a table. That caused her to turn back around and bump the locker. This continued for about 5 minutes before I realized the game was broken here. The plot of Home Sweet Home is severely disjointed and can be very hard to follow. This is partly by design and partly by questionable storytelling. In the game, you play as Tim, who is looking for his wife Jane, who has been having visions in her sleep and seeing things that aren't there. Standard ghost story affair. The game uses this plot to try and confuse the player by having them string through multiple areas in a straight, linear line, despite them being impossible to connect. A closet in a school dorm leads to your house, which leads to a puddle of blood, which pulls you into a different shack in the middle of nowhere.
Wait, this is completely different.
It's all connected, but it doesn't make sense how it's connected. Home Sweet Home makes the player search for items and context clues to tell the story, making you really have to work to dig out any kind of lore here. When Tim is in his home, the story is at its most coherent. It's about his wife seeing supernatural events and losing her mind to the events until they're so strong Tim is pulled into them as well. This is an understandable, haunted house type of story that's easy to get behind. However, once Tim starts teleporting to random locations, it's hard to follow. He's hunted by the ghost of a schoolgirl, but I wasn't able to find any relation he or his wife had to the schoolgirl. The ghost had its own story and plot independent of Tim running around the area. The same can be said about the game's other enemy, a gigantic ghost monster called a Petra. The Petra has its own story and reason for existing that all occur outside of Tim's experience. It's worth noting that Home Sweet Home is the first entry in a potential series, as the game on its own merits seems to tell you less than half of a story, and only has a playtime of about 2 to 3 hours. I was shocked because the final act of the game was the absolute best, most tense, genuinely frightening experience the game has to offer, and then right at the climax of the act, the screen flashes, "To be continued in episode 2. Tons of loose threads left hanging, no questions really answered. Just an abrupt and disappointing ending. However, if episode 2 can match the energy of that final act, I will really be looking forward to it. As of right now, episode 2 still has no confirmed date. If you're able to find Home Sweet Home on the cheap and are in a mood for some hauntingly spooky atmospheres, I'd recommend this game. However, it's worth noting that Home Sweet Home follows in a vein of first-person combatless horror, such as Amnesia and Outlast, both of which I feel are much better examples of this style. But if you've played those games and have an itch for a new experience in the genre, Home Sweet Home can be seen as sort of a B-tier entry, but still is able to provide some chilling goosebumps. If you like this review, I'll be doing more of these. I'll also be doing more other videos, such as Let's Plays, unboxings, all that good stuff. If you like, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching AgroPool.